Welcome to Building My Legacy podcast. This podcast is designed for leaders and entrepreneurs who want to leave a legacy and will provide strategies that focus upon key elements for legacy creation, determining your desired impact and its benefit, increasing your legacy's reach by engaging key stakeholders, planning, prioritizing, and executing. Here's your host, Dr. Lois Sonstegard.
Welcome, everybody, to today's Building My Legacy podcast. I have with me today Joe Bernstein. He is founder of Drop the Armor Wellness, and he's a men's coach. You know, we see a lot of women's coaches and women helping women in the business world, and especially in the entrepreneurial world. We don't see a lot in terms of coaches specifically for men. So I find that fascinating. Joe, you started out in working in corporate America, went through a life-changing experience that really caused you to shift and to look at what you wanted next in life. And I think part of what you experienced and how you began to reflect and shift may be part of what our audience is also looking at. You know what? My life isn't quite working the way I want it to work. I'm not making I'm gaining, but I'm losing at the same time. So let's start by sharing your story and how you ended up doing what you're doing.
Great. Thank you. First of all, thank you for having me. I like to live a lot of gratitude, and I appreciate being on here and getting a chance to share with your audience. My story, it's got so many ins and outs, and I'll take it to where I was at. I was 31 in 2013. I've been about 11, 12 years into a career with a company I loved. I felt connected to the mission, the values. I was performing really well, running multiple stores for Bose Corporation. However, most of my life I'd been pretty unhealthy. I'd been overweight from a very young age, and my health wasn't great. I was running into some trouble with kidney stones. I had to have surgery. I was already starting to lose mobility in my late 20s, early 30s. And I was married, but not in my best relationship. And so, about 5 months into couples therapy, there was a couples therapy session where my ex-wife at the time just was too busy to show up. And I finally, after 7 years of being in this relationship, of biting my tongue and holding back and not wanting to rock the boat, because I couldn't imagine risking losing a marriage, losing a relationship, or even having the discomfort of some of our arguments and fights that would show up when I did try and stand up for myself. I finally stood up for myself. I asked her to be more deeply engaged in our relationship in the process of healing it. And she asked for what she wanted. She asked for a divorce. So that was a big pivotal moment in my life where things seemed to fall apart. Here I am, a guy who's not happy with his health, who had a marriage that I knew was treacherous, was tumultuous. We were working on it, but I thought it was going to last. I thought I was going to be in it for a long time. And I was in a career that I loved, but I could already start seeing some of my passion wane. And so it just kind of woke up one day realizing, all right, my relationship's pretty much over. My job that I've been enjoying for over a decade, I see myself losing passion. And finally, my health, it's just, I had been losing a little bit of weight, but I've been up and down. I'd lose 20, I'd lose 30, I'd lose 60, I'd gain back 80, my whole adult life. And so, something happened. I was sitting there one day, a few weeks after the whole decision to divorce came up, and I finally decided it was this is it. I can keep going down this trajectory. I can be unhealthy. I can be lonely. I can work a retail job that, I had some fun in, some passion in the rest of my life, or I could take responsibility and change and grow. And so there was a huge moment of just grabbing the reins of my life. And then I dove into a couple of years of deep, deep personal growth work and transformed everything from losing 160 pounds in a very natural and pretty sustainable, healthy way to truly transforming my beliefs around who I was socially, romantically, what I could do as far as a professional career. And then eventually made the leap and left retail and decided to start writing and coaching. So I've got a lot of little nooks and crannies in that story, but we'll leave it there for now and see where we're at.
So you work primarily with men. What is it that brings men to you, Joe?
Yeah, that is a great question. Often what brings men to me is they're on a growth path. Something doesn't feel right. Something doesn't fit. Maybe they've got a really great career, but they're just not taking care of their health, and they're starting to really feel it, especially as they're in their late 30s or their 40s, or they're getting closer to, 50 or so. Maybe they actually have good health and they have a good relationship, but they just have always felt like they're stuck. They're not hitting the next level when it comes to progressing in leadership, or they want to get out of a career and change to a new career. But essentially what it tends to be is it tends to be people that are like really heady. They're guys who are very intellectual, and they've decided something needs to change in their life, right? And so what they've done is they've maybe gone to therapy, they started reading a bunch of self-help books, maybe they found a men's group, and they have all this new knowledge about how they work on the inside. But what I often hear is, okay, therapy was nice, I know myself better, a little more kind to myself, but nothing's changing. Or, I hired a personal trainer and a dietitian, but it only worked for as long as I hired them. Nothing stuck. Or essentially they're at a point where they can't make a big decision. Do they leave the relationship? Do they leave their career? Do they sell their company? And so really they're just stuck in a place where they're trying to learn their way and talk their way into a better life. And often I hear them say, I actually want to be someone who's taking action, but I find myself procrastinating. I find myself holding back. So it's really guys that are pretty smart. They have some success professionally, but something's not fitting, and they've tried all these things to change, but it's all in the head, and they're not really working at a heart level or a body level. They're not taking the big risks to actually change their life. That's a bit of where people show up. Is like they're ready to take the action.
So tell me,
yeah,
people have gone to different places, used various resources to get unstuck and haven't been able to get unstuck. What is it that you do differently that gets stuck people unstuck?
Yeah, that is a really good question. So, the first thing I look at is, are they really clear with what they want? I all the time will get people reach out to me and they are stuck because they're in a position of being so hyper-focused on what they no longer want. Like they're focused on the things that aren't working in their lives. And they have a vision for what life should look like, but often that vision's not theirs. It's not based in their own values. It's not based in what is really possible for them. It's either limited by what they've had before, or it's limited by what they fear risking, or it's based in the values of their culture, their family, the society, the media, like the world around them, especially with men. Men have been taught that we're supposed to do certain things to be successful and to be happy. And so a lot of the time people have followed that path. Like they've gotten the good degree and they got the good, well-paying job and they got the house and, the family, but they still don't feel excited, fulfilled. And so the first thing I do is I'll spend a deep amount of time. It could be anywhere from 2 to 3 months with people, digging deeper into their vision and just blowing up all of the focus on getting out of the pain they're in or getting out of the stuckness they're in, and really looking at, all right, if you really could make anything happen, what would it look like? Starting with a deeper vision that's rooted in their values. So we'll spend months sometimes digging in to their core values and what it would really look like and where they connect to that value, and making sure it's really theirs and it's not like people from their past, that their hands on the wheel of their life. So we start there. I think that's it. A lot of the time people are trying to force change based on a concept of what they don't want. I think getting really clear on what they do want, getting really clear on their own values and learning to connect with their own emotions and the people in their life from a deeper place. So that's it. I think stuckness is just a matter of perspective, and it's a matter of knowing we don't want what we have, but not really being so clear that we can get what we want and going after what we want. If that makes sense.
Yeah. So part of what I'm hearing you say, Joe, is that it's those pressures of success, making money, buying a house, having happy wife, family, children. Those things that we've used as measures may or may not be measures of happiness. So part of it is people knowing what makes them happy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that alone is elusive. So how do you help people sort that? Because that seems to me as a beginning place.
Right. That can be elusive. I mean, the truth is sometimes we don't know fully until we experiment, until we try things on, until we figure things out. I often find that like I'll have clients that have worked with a coach or someone before that has a program, has a 12-step system. Like a current client I love working with, he worked for 6 months or so with like a Tony Robbins coach. And there's nothing wrong with Tony Robbins coaches. I know some that I really like, and I'm kind of like, oh, I mean, I should hire him one day. But he just kept feeling like, the cookie cutter approach wasn't working. So with me, I take away all cookie cutter approach. I'm not like, if you want fast change, I tell people I'm not the guy. Like I'm the guy who we're going to spend 8 to 12 months digging deep, doing experiments, trying things on, really orienting towards how things feel rather than the actual result or the outcome. I think about like a client I have who he had always believed that you have to, be the best. You have to be the best in your field. You have to be number one. You have to be smarter than everybody else. You have to make at least $400,000 a year. There was all these rules that he had. And at the end of the day, what he really was starting to see now that he's in his like late 40s is he doesn't love that competitive way of being all the time. He doesn't love having to work 60, 70 hours a week. He loves spending time with his family. He loves spending time in nature. He loves having creative projects, even though he is like a black and white numbers, blockchain, Bitcoin genius. So it was almost for him like a matter of understanding he can take that and make that his life. He doesn't have to keep checking the boxes of what people think a traditional success is. And for him, like that's an example of him just letting go of all of it, him just letting go of what other people are thinking and needing status all the time and really leaning into what he loves. Now, of course, at this moment, he's now making like more money than he ever did because he's got multiple projects that are actually really successful right now and he's got more free time. But that's it. It's really discovering what are the things that I was told should make me happy and what really does make me happy, and trying and experimenting and testing things out. Sometimes that means big risk. Like sometimes it means big risk. He sold a company. He quit writing a blog he'd been writing for 12 years. He took a job as a CMO with this company that allowed him to work 4 days a week and to be done working at 3 so he could spend time with his kids. And he decided that he could let go of writing a book he was writing about blockchain. I mean, like it's a bunch of big risks for him in the last 7 or 8 months. But now he's getting to the point where he's really just feeling like, okay, we're finally getting there. And so a lot of the time it's just a matter of experimenting and being willing to risk things and being willing to understand, like, you're resourceful. You'll be able to figure things out if they don't go in the direction you want. And experimentation is part of the process of living a lit up life. We can't just be cookie cutter and follow someone else's steps.
You talk about emotional intelligence not being the most important, and that's pretty out there because emotional intelligence is really highly held and regarded right now in corporate circles and in human resources. So share a little bit about why you feel that way and what brought you to that.
Thank you. Thank you for asking. I'm so glad you asked that, actually. I actually believe that emotional intelligence as taught, look, I love Daniel Goleman. Like his work's great. I've read his books. The programs he has right now are pretty amazing. But the way it's been taught and delivered to us by academia, by the Harvard Business Review, by human resources, by a lot of corporate executive coaches and leaders, it's focusing on just the knowledge of emotions. It's what it says it is, emotional intelligence. And the truth of the matter is we don't connect with people through our intellect most of the time. We connect with people and ourselves through a more whole, more embodied experience. So I say emotional intelligence is BS because the way it's been taught is essentially, and my clients will laugh at this, if you are charismatic, if you look like you're listening, if you know how to say things that sound compassionate, right? If you're able to actually talk about an emotion as if you knew what it meant then you can pass. Like when I was in retail, I had really high scores for emotional intelligence on my 360 reviews. I was known for that. But the truth was I was actually repressing emotions. I wasn't speaking up about things that sometimes bothered me or that really frustrated me or hurt me. I wasn't someone that really knew how to handle and understand my responses to things like fear and anger or shame. It's kind of like I say emotional intelligence is BS because I want people to be emotionally competent and emotionally fluent. And a lot of the times, emotional intelligence is really about checking certain boxes to look like we're a good leader or to look like, we're a good team member. In reality, there's deeper depths to understanding the embodied experience of emotion, to understanding how to really connect with people at a core level when they're in need. So, and to connect with ourselves, to really process our own self and our own experience and show up with authenticity and honesty. Like that's a big, buzzword right now is authenticity. Well, if we're following the box of like, hey, you can't be frustrated and you can't show it. And by the way, you have to tell people that you're empathetic and you're listening and your door's always open. But when they walk in, you're frustrated and you're overwhelmed and you're not owning it and you take it out on them. Like that's what I mean. It's just creating a reality of like, what is a true experience of a human being as a whole human in emotion, and bringing that to your personal life, bringing that to your relationships, bringing that to your family, not just that corporate version of what we're taught emotional intelligence is. So that's actually a topic like we could dive in on pretty deep. I hope that that overview lands. I want people to feel their emotions on a deeper level and know who they are when they're experiencing their emotions, not just check the boxes that make them look like a good leader in their boardroom, if you will.
So there's a difference in between owning your feelings and sometimes expressing them. You can own them without necessarily expressing them. And part of that, I think, is what is talked about with emotional intelligence. So I speak to that a little bit because I think that is a struggle, particularly that men have between, can I own it without expressing it? And if I own it without expressing it, how do I manage it and deal with it?
Right. Well, so I think that's a broken paradigm. Like, I'm just going to be honest there. I think that the reason we've been taught that you should own it, but not necessarily express it, is because we've never been taught the skill set of how to express it in a way that doesn't potentially harm others or ruin our reputations. Right. So we've learned that when we express our emotions, it creates disconnection. And for anyone who's really into, say, the work of, say, like Brené Brown, for example, right? Or even Esther Perel, she's bringing a lot of her knowledge of relationship into the corporate world right now, into work world. Very clearly in their trainings, even in the leadership trainings that Brené Brown is doing right now, no one's telling people in those more forward-thinking, ways of training people to be better leaders to not express their emotions. Actually, when we're not expressing them, we're not trustworthy. If someone can see you owning your emotion, like, okay, I'm keeping it to myself. I know I'm frustrated right now. I'm not going to blame someone else, which is the ownership part. The ownership part is like, Lois, if we work together, I can't blame you because I got upset about something you said. I have to learn that that's my own trigger, my own reaction, my own story. But then if I'm just holding it in, people know something's wrong, right? People know something's up. And so they don't trust us if we don't actually learn to express it. So my belief is that we just have to learn to express it in a way that's safe, own it. Like I like to say, name it and claim it. Like name it for yourself, claim it. Like go into a room, grab a notebook, whatever. Okay, I'm angry right now. And do the processing work. Get clear on what is really going on. If you're angry, what's been violated, right? Like, how do we actually understand what do I perceive as being violated? An emotion, a boundary, an agreement, something I value, something I believe. Where am I perceiving this in a way where I'm not seeing the big picture? Like there's a lot to owning it, but I do think we then have to learn to express it. The expression can't happen in the moment without processing it and understanding what's going on at a deeper level. So that's a great question, really. I do think we need to learn to express it But often let's express the real emotion. Chances are, especially as a man, if you're feeling anger, if you're feeling frustration, that's what I like to call a guard dog emotion. Chances are it's hiding something else. You're feeling disconnection. You're feeling loss. You're feeling fear. Something could go wrong. Maybe you're just hurt because you thought someone was going to show up a certain way and they didn't. You thought a deal or a situation was going to go a certain way and it didn't. So get clear on what's really going on, and then build connection, build trust by expressing it with quality, effective communication skills and an open heart. So that's a great question, Lois. Thank you so much for that one. Yeah, digging that one.
So I want to go back to men who maybe in the later stages of their career, they're looking at what's next for them. Mm-hmm. And they've been caught up in the measures of success that they have worked for years, and that has made them very successful. They've become known, perhaps because of what they have been able to achieve.
Yeah.
So as people go to that next step, it seems to me there's also that there's a risk, there's that gnawing question of that's a new skill set I'm going to need. And so what would be your advice to people, men in particular, who are looking at that next stage, that next step?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, looking at next steps, I think that we really underappreciate and undervalue transitions, right? I think that often people aren't very clear on what they want, and they're not very clear about how big it can feel to change something. Let me check for understanding. Am I to assume we're talking about a man who's maybe like looking at retirement or looking at like what's the next business towards the end? Like they've mastered a business, they're ready to sell it and figure out what comes next. So I actually think it's really important. Men have been taught very often, if we're talking specifically about men, to ignore fear, to ignore it, to overcome it. It's so virtuous as a man to be called fearless. And in reality, that's going right in the face and in the wrong direction of who we are in our humanity. If we're looking for a next step, it's probably because we're looking for something that supports us more, looking for something that has us feel more connected to our mission and our purpose, looking for something that feels more grounded and more powerful than what we're doing, that feels like a version of freedom, but still with a sense of service to others. So to make a big change, you're going to have to experience some level of fear. If you're going to go into it thinking that you're fearless or not being willing to process or look at the emotions that come up around it, chances are you're going to make a leap that's not really true for you. Or you're going to set yourself up for the idea of freedom. Maybe it's the whole cliche of like the Mai Tais on the private beach or something crazy like that. It's like an extreme example. But really, what is it that is going to light you up? I think it's a great time, every 5 to 10 years, it's a great time to look at what are my true values? What's really important to me? What's important to me now? Because what was important to me 5 or 10 years ago probably isn't in today's, in my current life today. So get clear. The other thing I would do for men who maybe they're later in their career is to do some work on unpacking what they really, really want. Like, who do they want to be? Toxic masculinity, big buzzword the past few years, or buzz phrase. I don't know how necessary it is to look at like dismantling your toxic masculinity, but I think it is worth it to look at what were some of the ideals and ideas that were fed to you about being a man that have maybe been important to you at this point in your life, but just aren't as important anymore. Like, is it more important for you to actually be nourishing and to provide and to be someone who gives a lot to others than it is to create, than it is to protect? Right? Than it is to actually like make a ton of money or be really successful. What is it that's important to you? One of the most profound things I see is when someone like they've made enough money and they retire early just because they want to spend a bunch of time with family and they want to do things that light them up. Like maybe they want to go do some volunteer work or environmental work or social justice work. and they don't feel like they need the validation of the awards and the big company and having the meetings to go to every day. They're living the life that really feeds them. That to me, I think, is totally courageous. To me, that's like the new version of what it means to be winning as a man, is to be able to like go home and do the things that we love, that bring meaning, and not just chase down significance all the time. Not that there's anything wrong with significance, but not just chase down significance and building up our net worth, et cetera, as well too. So a little bit of a roundabout way of saying it, but live your values and open your heart. That's the bottom line.
Live your values and open your heart. That's true for everybody, isn't it?
Yeah.
Joe, our time is almost up. Anything we have missed that is important for our audience to know that you would like to share?
I don't know if there's anything we missed, but I will say this. I will say that for so many men out there, especially men who are focused on building their legacy, or focused on being great leaders, on having a great career, or building a great business, we get stuck in our heads. So often we've been taught that how smart we are and how successful we are is our worth. It's our value. And to truly live a great life, a life that lights us up, a life where we're dropping the armor, a life where we're really feeling whole, it's about aligning our head, our heart, and our guts. So that's what I want to say. I think so often we've been taught it's about leading with the head. And I believe that men and masculinity and really our world, forget about just men, our world going forward, it's about leading with a deep connection between a clear head and an open heart. Mm-hmm. So that might mean doing things differently. It might mean challenging the way that you've been brought up or the way that things once were. But ultimately, that's what I'm here for. I'm here to help other men believe that they can create change, that they can live an exciting life, that they can take the risks that they're afraid of taking, that'll really have them feeling a sense of deeper love and grounded power and being committed to what they most value in this life. So that's the bottom line. I think that's the final thing I'll say is connect that head and heart, and you'll be living a great life.
I love that. Connect the head and the heart. Boy, we can all use a big dose of that, I think, especially right now. There seems to be a bigger need for it than ever. We will have information about Joe in the show notes and information about how you can get in contact with him if you would like to do so. And you are always welcome to reach out to us as well, and we will connect you with Joe. So on that, Joe, thank you so much for being with Building My Legacy podcast today. And for all of those who are listening, thank you for being with us.
Thanks for having me so much, Lois. Bye.
You've been listening to Building My Legacy podcast with Dr. Lois Sonstegard. To book your appointment with Dr. Sonstegard, visit www.buildtomorrow.com.